Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Now, with most of Hisashi's skin missing, it's around this time that the doctors would start trying to use gauze as a way to act as a skin graft, because they couldn't technically use a skin graft, being that you can't cut skin off of a person that has basically no platelets, and he could unfortunately bleed out. And also keep in mind, they had all these machines hooked up to his system where he was secreting these fluids out of his orifices, his body, and everything else. Not to mention that the radiation was liquefying his very muscles, and all this stuff was coming out. He was losing about 3 liters of fluid a day. So the medical team would every single day have to wrap his entire body to where only his eyes and his toes were exposed. And this would take about 3 hours. They would have to do it every day because, again, he's secreting 3 liters of fluid every day. So this would soak the gauze, and they would have to clean it off because it would risk possibly contaminating him and giving him an infection. So they were really trying to avoid that. So they would do this every single day. And I think I mentioned a side note that when you don't have skin, your skin actually helps you regulate your body temperature. Well, with most of his skin missing, he couldn't regulate that body temperature. So again, when they were changing these gauzes, they would have to up the temperature in the room to 86 degrees, and they had to wrap this gauze in a speedy way, but they also had to do it in a way to where they didn't crush his muscles and everything else. Another unfortunate thing that would happen around this time is his toenails, his fingernails would completely fall off, and his eyelids would actually decay, and he would begin bleeding from his eyes. As we're nearing the end of our story, and we are getting very close to the end of the story, unfortunately, I really want to take the time to just kind of make a couple side notes that when you look up Hisashi Ouchi's story on the internet, unfortunately, there's a lot of false information that you have to be careful of. One of the biggest things that you can do is you can go on your internet search, type up Hisashi Ouchi's name, and immediately one of the first pictures is going to pop up. Is there's this picture of this person kind of strung up on a hospital bed, and it's completely red and charred, and it doesn't even look like a human. It just literally looks like a bunch of meat just hanging on a bed. And unfortunately, a reporter or someone had actually just took this picture and used it and was like, well, that's Hisashi. That's what these horrible doctors did to this poor man. And it's not the case. It really isn't the case. The actual picture is just something used for a book for burn victims. And the really unfortunate thing about this whole story is the doctors really, really got the worst end of it, as they had done everything in their power to try to save a man, and everyone was just like, it's a real shame what those horrible doctors did to an unaliving man. They just refused to let him unalive. And that's not the case. They really did everything in their power to save this man. And it wasn't that these doctors were evil and they were forcing this man who was eroding through his body to live, when it wasn't the case. I truly believe in my heart that throughout everything that Hisashi went through, he really just wanted to live, and he wanted to fight to live to be with his family. I think Hisashi made his decision when he at first would throw that breathing mask off and yell, I'm not a guinea pig. And it wouldn't be until he would look at his family and he would decide that regardless what he went through, he would fight through the pain. And I like to really truly believe in my heart that's what Hisashi wanted, even in these bad moments. And a lot of people even villainize the family and just claim, well, they were so horrible, so selfish for wanting him to, go through all that. And if you really think about it, if he had actually survived, all right, if Hisashi had actually survived everything that he went through, if he had survived all of it, the doctors would not be villainized, the family would not be villainized. And we will get into, the nurses and the doctors' feelings on Hisashi later on, but at this current time, the doctors truly believed if there's just a small little window, if there's just a fraction of hope that we can save this man, that's something worth fighting for. That's worth all of the trouble, all of the transfusions, all of everything. It's worth all of it. If we have just a small glimmer of hope, it is worth all of this. And that is one of the main reasons I completely commend all of this medical team, because at the end of the day, they just wanted to save this man so badly. They would actually be doing some tests on Hisashi, checking out his skin. They were potentially looking at just different avenues for a skin graft, and the dermatologist would look down, and on the edges of the burnt skin next to the good skin, they would notice these little white dots. And this would be some really good news for the doctors, as it would seem to the dermatologist that there seemed to be skin cells trying to form and grow. So they would contact Hisashi's sister and ask if she would be okay with being a skin graft donor, which she had no problem with. And it's there they wanted to try to create a form of skin for Hisashi to kind of place on the skin that was missing as a way to help boost these skin cells from growing to where he could eventually grow back skin. They would actually start placing these skin parts on Hisashi on November 18th, and this would be day 50 after exposure. But also, unfortunately, on November 18th, another really bad problem would arise, as the lead physician would notice that there was actually blood in Hisashi's stools. And unfortunately, he realized at that point that somewhere in his body on the inside there was a bleed. It should also be noted that they would find this out after doing the skin grafts. He actually had to have about 70 skin grafts on his body, and each one of those grafts would actually take about 3 to 4 days. But on November 18th, they would do an endoscope also on Hisashi to look inside of his intestines, as they had done before, and his entire intestines was filled with blood. And not only was it filled with blood, this blood was secreting through his bowels. And it is said that he would secrete around 800 milliliters of blood a day. But the doctors would see one more glimmer of hope in Hisashi, as they would notice all the blood in his intestines. They would also notice in his intestine lining that there was little spots as well. And the medical team would confirm that it would seem that he was trying to regrow the mucous membranes that the radiation had eradicated, meaning that his body was still fighting.